This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
I'm so happy that you're here with us again today.
Yeah.
You sound enthused.
Yeah. Well, I have been sick for the last week or so.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm finally feeling better. Finally, oh my gosh.
Yes, yes. And it was a kind of a scary thing because the kids, last week we've missed a couple, and we're really making efforts to correct that. And one of the things that happens is, so far the time that Josh and I have been doing the podcast is that we've always tried to do it the week of so that it's very relevant. Yeah. And what happens is, lately, we've been having illness, which Connor, my grandson, your nephew, got pneumonia, was tested for COVID. We've been quarantined. And then you got sick, and we're like, oh my gosh, you sounded just like what Connor had. Connor gave it to his sister Madison, and then you got it, and we'll just try to avoid the vibration that is COVID. This is a cold. It's over. Yeah. You're moving on. But at any rate, what it's come to my attention that when we try to do it the week of, when something comes up, like you being sick, and with me being kind of overwhelmed, taking care of sick family members, you know, and then before that, a couple weeks ago, it was a technical issue. You know, I feel like what we need to do is start, you know, making sure. I feel like this commitment, you know, to put this out every single Thursday. So we're going to start doing some ahead of time. Okay. Which I know that you don't really like that, but, you know, I think that's what we need to do so it's consistent, that people can always count on it being out there instead of... Yeah. You know, so we're going to start doing them ahead of time, just to let you know that. Okay. All right.
Thanks for letting me know ahead of time.
You have trained me well. Right. So today I am thrilled, as are you, Josh, that our friend Richard is here with us again today.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Hi.
Hey, Richard. So grateful that you're on the phone with us again today and doing the podcast. Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here. I really am.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The subject that we have today is I want to talk about work life, and what's that like to have autism and, you know, have to interact with people that, you know, don't necessarily, Josh is laughing already, don't necessarily want to interact with. Just, you know, like everybody. We work, we have people that we don't particularly care for that we have to interact with, and you put autism on top of that. I think it's a pretty important subject to talk about, especially Josh is heading the path he's going, either, you know, working towards a job right now, so it looks like. Fingers crossed, we still don't know. Waiting, checking the mail every day. Don't know if the voc rehab has made their decision yet, but so that's what we want to talk about. But I was talking with you recently, Richard, and something happened that was really, really bothered you, and you did something about it. So can you tell us? Yeah. Can you tell us about it?
From when I was telling you the story, it sounded like it really bothered you too.
It did really bother me. It actually, it made me very angry, is what it did. Yeah.
Yeah, and it made me angry too when it happened. So I was looking for autism podcasts. I mean, of course, I got you guys saved, and just looking for other ones to see what's out there. And I ran across this one called, and it is not by this, but it's called Autism Speaks Podcast. And basically, it is not Autism Speaks, but it is a podcast that was done by adolescent children who want to pretty much, they're bullies, is what it came down to. They're not good people. They were bullies, and their stories had to do with all the junk that they had to put up with, and the reason why it's called Autism Speaks is because it was more of a bullying tactic of trying to make fun of autistic people. And the picture that they had posted, I'm sorry I did not send this to you.
Oh, yeah,
but
okay.
Basically, if anyone's seen The Elephant Man, what they did is they took like a Snapchat filter and made their eye droopy and made them look, kind of dumb in a sense, and so it made them look like, I think the term is elephantitis. So it made them look like that they had that.
Right.
So they're associating that with autism. So basically, what I did is, obviously that made me furious, and
right.
I thought about it for a little while, and what I did is I contacted the program that they were using, which I won't get into, but I contacted them, and I looked at their terms and conditions. I went through the entire thing and pointed out sections of, that the podcasts on their platform should not, have any bullying or any bad content or violent content or anything like that. And then I eventually got through to them, and they pulled it. So when you look under Autism Speaks now, it will pull up the actual Autism Speaks rather than their podcast. So I think that they took out the search functions altogether.
Yeah.
I also contacted Autism Speaks, and they were great about it. And they said that the podcast was already pulled, and that they were really nice about it, at least. So I wrote several letters and just kind of was that squeaky wheel and got it done to where no one has to see that, and no one should have to see that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that you're actually understating how much effort and work you put into it, because I know that you talked to me about it even a little bit, and whenever you and I were talking, you were absolutely furious, but at the same time, you didn't want to go overboard with it, with how frustrated you were at this, and you wanted to make sure that you had done the right thing. And
yeah, and sometimes that's why it's kind of like it's nice to have you guys around just to kind of bounce that off and say, hey, look, I might be a little bit too over dramatic here, and
that's my job.
Yeah, but in all honesty, that what you did was absolutely the right thing to do, and you took steps so that it was respectfully done, albeit a little bit angry. But
well, I went.
You guys saw more of that though, because I tried to be tactful in my letters, but also at the same time I tried to be forceful.
Yeah.
Well,
emphatic, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so after we talked, you told me about it. I went immediately, and I did see that icon that they were using. I did see it, and and it's not okay. And what the things that they were talking about were not okay. It was mean-spirited. It was mocking. It was making fun of somebody with autism, and it was bullying somebody with autism, and making it seem like that. They were trying to indicate that, you know what, making fun of autism is okay.
Right.
And they were just bullies, and I'm grateful that you did what you did. You wrote the letters. You made the contacts. And because when you told me, first of all, when you said Autism Speaks, and I'm going, what? Why are they? Yeah. But now I get it. So let's be very clear about this. The organization Autism Speaks did not put that podcast out.
Exactly.
But these...
And in fact, they were great about it, and I contacted them next only to tell them that their name was being used in a really terrible way, so that they could even do something about it, because originally the platform, or they were basically saying that, well, Autism Speaks actually has to write them a letter to complain about it. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to Autism Speaks it. I'm sure they'd be glad to hear about this.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be productive, let's do this.
Yeah. Yes. So for me, in the bigger picture here, the thing that really bothers me is that, we live in a time where autism is known. It's something that's understood, better than ever. More people have autism than have ever been diagnosed before. There's an understanding of what people on the spectrum need, how people on the spectrum can thrive and benefit from particular adaptations. And that's just a couple of things. But you know what? It really makes me so angry that there's a mentality out there that these punks feel like that they can mock a group of people the way that they were and feel like that's something that they do freely. Not only do they do it with their friends, but they record the bullying and put it out for anybody that wants to hear it. And it's just shocking, but I have to tell you that on some level, I've dealt with that kind of mentality since Josh was born. And even before a diagnosis, because, we laugh about it. Josh would screech. we laugh now. Believe me, it wasn't funny.
Yeah. I got a taste of it from my nephew.
Oh yeah, Connor screeched the other day, and Josh looked at me, and I go, "Oh, not even close to you, dude. Not even close to you." So, yeah.
So when it's happening, you're kind of rubbing your hands together and going, "It's revenge time."
Well, I kind of am saying, yeah, okay. Yeah, because it like he sees it, but then it doesn't last long, Richard, because then Josh starts getting upset because the noise is too loud and it's uncontrolled. And there's a little 4-year-old, bouncing off the wall, screeching. And then his little sister that's 3, she joins in because that looks like great fun. And, but it's kid stuff. But with Josh, it was out of frustration and being overwhelmed. And, could not get his hands dirty. Couldn't do certain things and brightness and sounds. And, it just was an awful lot. My point is, bringing it back to what you just experienced and what you stepped up and took care of, is that it's something that, as a parent, I had to deal with people that were bullies, adults that were bullies even, kids that were bullies, because Josh was different than them. And adults, maybe they didn't understand him and didn't have patience. They looked at me like, what the heck am I doing? Why can't I control this kid? Why can't, it just goes on. And so one of the things that happened is when you told me about this, that you took care of, is that I'm disgusted that there are people at this stage in our country where they feel like they can mock other individuals the way that these kids did. And I was just disgusted by that. And at the same time, it kind of brought up the experience that I had going, raising Josh, of having to deal with those bullies that feel like they can just say whatever they want and hurt whoever they want and label in a negative way, and not be held accountable
not have
for that.
repercussions. Yeah.
And so it feels like to me, repercussions. It's a good way to put it, Josh, because I'm looking at, whoa, yeah, everybody pointed their finger at me going, hey, lady, control your kid. When I'm at this point, you tell me that these two little turds are putting out this this podcast, and I'm going, hey, where's mom and dad? You know?
Yeah.
And,
Well, sadly, the story that they told was them getting in trouble with the neighbor because they were breaking windows, and the dad ended up beating up the neighbor because the neighbor kind of reprimanded their children. So it's like, that's where the parents are. That's exactly what's happening, is that they did absolutely nothing but the opposite of probably what should have been done.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, of being held accountable. Because growing up and to this day, it can be difficult because I don't know where the line is, right? I don't know what Josh can't do, what Josh doesn't want to do sometimes. And that's just the truth. And that's something that I deal with on a regular basis. But here's the fact. Josh was told from the time he was little is that, autism or not, honey, you cannot be disrespectful. You cannot just go, yell at me what it is that you want done. And he was taught that he could tell me anything he wanted to tell me, but there's a way to do things. There's a way to communicate with people. And so what my point is that there are no excuses for being a decent human, for not being a decent human, I should say. It's something that's important. It's to treat other people with respect and to try to see where they're coming from. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to live it. You don't have to know it. But dealing with it with non-judgment is always helpful, is always beneficial for everybody involved. So thank you for doing what you did, Richard. Thank you very, very much, because that kind of energy does not need to be sent out into our world. It just doesn't. And so you kind of were a superhero, flew in, wrote some letters, took care of them.
I am Letterman!
I think that's copywritten already.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'll have to figure something out then.
Right. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for that and for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I don't. We gotta. The subject for today was about working, and part of this, I just kind of want to go into this. That to start here, that work life is hard enough sometimes for people in general without autism. And you're kind of stuck in a situation sometimes where these people are not your friends. They're not your family. You don't choose to be around them all the time, all day long. But there you are, stuck with them.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, my pappy had a wonderful job. We lived up in Pennsylvania. He worked for the government, but he did something with computers that... I am so bad at the computers that I always forget what computer jobs are called. So I don't even know what his job was. But what was it? No, don't remember.
Didn't he program or something?
It's
like
something, but it's not. He wasn't a programmer. He did a specific thing, and I can't remember. Anyway, he would. They would go over to, Italy, and they would fly all over the place, taking care of things. And he worked with one lady that would always, in meetings and everything, she would pick her nose and eat it.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, Josh. Oh. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I won't say that again. Yeah, that one affected Josh. And so, whatever. Yeah. And, and Pappy would be like, yeah, that's kind of gross. And, but, he would say something to her that's not, if she could not do that, because it's not, but, you know what, when they would go out to eat and everything, she was included. You know what I mean? It's like there wasn't like, oh, this is this person that's doing some strange things. He said something to her, but then she's included in the group.
Right.
But nonetheless, they're dealing with a person that does something that they're all going, like you just reacted to, Josh. And you know what? When you work with somebody like that, you can't just make them go away because they work next to you.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm thinking that working with some people, excuse me, that have different behaviors, whether it could be gossip or sarcasm or they're a demeaning boss, or like you have cliques that people get into. And a lot of times cliques, I don't know, do you know what a clique is?
Yes, I know what a clique is.
Okay. So that's hard enough for just, anybody. Mm-hmm. But when working and having autism, I just wanted to know if you can talk about that a little bit, Richard, you and Josh. Like, even starting, with an interview. Interviews are freaking stressful.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I know that with me in interviews, I am always so nervous about them, and either I don't know when to be quiet and share too much information because of that, or just something like that happens, and that I just totally screw it up.
Right, yeah. What about you, Richard?
Well, the thing is even with dealing with just people in general, and like interviews, test questions in school, things like that, everything really is a pattern. So if you research online, there's going to be certain specific questions that are mostly going to be asked during the interview. So if you're prepared for that, you can spout out pretty much what you want to say and kind of go from there. So you're at least somewhat prepared, but more or less of the time, usually sometimes during job interviews, it's not just like that, but they usually try to throw in maybe a slider question. So it's like, I know that when I, for example, like when I was talking to you, like through letters at first, I asked, I think it was something about what is your superpower?
Yeah.
And I remember that you used that, but I actually, when I wrote that to you, I heard that during a job interview.
Oh.
So, and that one kind of threw me off a little bit. But you just are open and honest about it. You use that honesty, the genuine behaviors that a lot of us have. But also just prepare on talking about what you're good at.
Right.
Why you should have that position.
Right.
So
when they ask you about your superpower, did you tell them that you're letterman?
It's copyrighted. I couldn't do that.
Oh. Right. Well, it is difficult because we're all individuals, yet with companies a lot of times you're expected to like blend in with everybody. They oftentimes use the term team player. And so when you've been working, how do you handle the nonsense of neurotypicals and that you're surrounded with at your workplace? Now, let me just say, I think it's okay to say that you worked at a car dealership.
Yes.
And you were an accountant.
Not exactly an accountant, but I did accounts receivable.
Okay.
But I've actually done a series of different things. That was the official position, but I've actually done accounts payable. I've done, a lot of reconciling. I've done like a boatload of different stuff, but that was my position. Yeah.
And so when you find yourself having to interact with coworkers, what stands out with you? Because, for example, Josh will be in the workforce, fairly soon. Because what we can say is that...
Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah, well, either they're going to send him to school to be, to go to school for library studies, or he's going to get trained for a job. Because if they're not going to do library studies, this is voc rehab I'm talking about, they're at least going to train him for a job.
Mm-hmm.
And, so he's going to be out there. So what things do you do that help you to maybe just get work through a work day, or through however you want to break it down, whichever one you'd like to talk about, like just having to put up with other people's nonsense, or meetings that you have to sit through, or just the overall experience? How do you, as a person with autism, deal with that?
Oh, it's a big subject, and I'll try to break it down as best as I can.
Okay.
Here's what I've noticed. Everything that happened in middle school, high school, all the drama, everything like that, as soon as you're out, you sit there and go, oh, it's all done. It's all over with. And then you get into the workplace, and guess what? I don't care if you're 16 or 60. People have not left high school. At least their mentality has not. It's crazy the amount of clicks, the amount of stuff that happens in the workplace, where it's like, at least with my attitude, I sit there and go, I just want to do my job and go home. I don't want to have to do this drama. I don't want to have to do this fighting with people. But it always happens.
Yeah.
And that's just not the lower people too. That's the supervisors. I've had in one of my last jobs, a supervisor turn my name around from Richard and say retard to make it sound like retard. That was a store manager.
Wow.
So,
wow.
It's from all levels. It's from all over. Right. So the more that you learn how to deal with it now, the better off you're going to be.
I think one of the issues I have, not necessarily with working, but in regards to the cliques and everything like that, is that in high school I wasn't a part of a clique. I moved freely through all of the different groups of people. Because
you are accepting of all people.
Yeah.
And all animals. Right.
Which is what high school really is.
Well, and since we are not a part of a clique, and believe me, I'm not either, guess what that makes us? A target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's why you see a lot of these, like those kids that I just dealt with. That's why you see autism now being made more fun of in the school setting. It's why at work I don't say that I'm autistic, because that instantly puts a judgment in people's heads. I'm not just the quirky person. I am now whatever they think autism is.
Right. Right.
So.
Yeah.
I just kind of. I don't tell people about it only because of the judgment of, what people perceive it to be.
Yeah.
So I just let them figure it out for themselves on and how they're going to group me in their little thing.
Right. And it goes along with exactly what you were talking about, and what we were talking about those kids, is that the judgment from others. And it's interesting because we work so hard to be inclusive. We work so hard to, and I had to fight, when he was growing up, for him to be a part of things, for him to be on teams, for him to be, have that social interaction. And there was exclusion. Yeah. There was, we've mentioned this before, is that people have their ideas of what's okay and what's not, and then they treat others in a pretty horrific way sometimes, like it is that your boss at that job, yeah. It's like, how dare him say something like that to you?
Yeah.
That makes me, Richard, that makes me as mad as those kids. Even probably more so because that was an adult, that was in a position of authority, that was behaving that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It made me upset too. It's like the person had no right to do that, and yet they will get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people are what's called like a smooth talker, or a schmoozer, or maybe they're charismatic and they present themselves to be a certain way, and yet when no one's looking, they behave badly, or even worse, they just think it's okay to behave like that.
Yeah.
And when you're at work, one of the things that because you're working with other people, you're just by nature of it, there's going to be gossip that goes on. There's going to be sarcasm that's used, and how do you deal with that kind of behavior?
The best thing that I've learned is that the more level-headed you are,
mm-hmm.
the more you use your brain instead of your emotions, the better off you're going to be. So here's an example that I recently had at my job. There's this one guy, and at first he tried to become my buddy.
Mm-hmm. And
when I was like, I'm not really into, hanging out outside of work, getting a drink, playing golf. I'm not into any of the things that he was into. He decided that it hurt his little ego, and I was all of a sudden his enemy. So he made it a point. Of course, he was the victim because I was being mean to him, which wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. But he was doing small little things, and he would constantly go to HR. Mm. And I just continued to be level-headed about it. Let him glare. Because that's exactly what it did. Most of the day, he just sat there glaring, and then he also played with some of the other coworkers while I sat there and I worked. Mm-hmm. And of course, he would nitpick and try to get me in trouble. The best thing that you can do is just be level-headed, communicate, especially with HR, and go from there. Mm-hmm. Try to figure out the best way to take care of that. The best way to take care of that kind of situation.
Well, how did you?
Because every situation is different. So.
Right, yeah, it is, and so. I know from knowing Josh that Josh needs things to be fair. He needs things to be, it really bothers him when he's dealing with people that don't follow the rules, that don't do the work that they're supposed to do.
That claim I did something I didn't, or things like that. And then try and force that view on others.
Right. It sounds like what Richard's talking about, too. Which is that somebody that for some reason decides that it's like the word he used earlier, is a target. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, this bullying ensues. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what that guy was doing to you, Richard, which was bullying. How do you manage? Because we talked about this before, is that you're 46 years old and
47. I'm actually turning 48 here pretty soon.
Oh, Well, happy birthday. I missed something.
Oh, no. It's in a couple months. Not yet.
Okay. Okay. What that means is that, you went to school, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, before people really understood autism. And when you went to school, there was not not an understanding of this, but it's not, nowadays people in agencies do their very best. Commercials come on TV, about the inclusion and about autism. So most people have heard about autism right now. For you, you did this without a diagnosis, and you did this without the supports that are out there now. And I wonder what that was like, and I wonder if that helped you to deal with to gain your coping mechanisms that you have now, because you were on your own from the get-go.
Yeah. I've thought about that a little bit, and it's like, if I had the extra help, would I be different? Would I have succeeded more? The answer to that is it's all apples and oranges.
Would you have what? We missed the last part you said. Would you be different? Would you be what?
Yeah, would I be different? Would I be a different person? Would I be better?
Oh.
Would I have gone further, like even with a career or something along those lines? But I think the answer to that is, as I'm saying, is apples and oranges, because
Right, I get it.
It sometimes makes me a stronger person. That I've learned to deal with it by myself, but at the same time, if I would have known back then, it's kind of hard to tell.
Right.
And the thing is like the best thing to do in this case is just have all of us learn about each other's experiences.
Right.
And what works for us, what doesn't, because we are a small group of people. Even though there's more of us out there now, but there's a small group of us, to where it's like we're all learning, experiencing, and growing, and how are we gonna grow past all this?
Right. When you were younger, before there was this understanding that people have now, were you considered difficult, or were you just kind of left out, or how was that? How were you treated then when you were in school?
I was definitely very much left out. I was bullied, and I was just kind of a different child, and especially since being an only child. It was one of those things where I spend a lot of time just kind of playing by myself, do a lot of things by myself. I did have my group of friends, that would come and go, but more or less at the time, it was just that.
Right. And because you're an only child too, I remember Josh would screech and everything, and then my mom came around and she goes, "What's he doing?" I'm like, "What? That's not normal." He's my first kid. I didn't know. And then here comes a sister bug, and these characteristics, this behavior, this not sleeping, this screeching, this having to have things particular, this, she wasn't like this. And I'm like, what's wrong with her?
That explains so much.
Yeah. So, right. It is. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I'd like to do is talk about some things that I've mentioned already here. But what advice do you have that people can, on the spectrum, or even somebody has a coworker that's on the spectrum, that's a, interested in knowing how to connect in a better way, maybe just communicate more effectively. Do you, when you're at work, I imagine it's because you mentioned this a little bit, alluded to it, that even now, you are kind of, now I know now the situation is different because of COVID. You're at home now. So, but
Right.
when you were there, when you had this job or any job, it's something that you've worked on pretty hard. So you saying that you use your mind instead of your emotions about it. But how do you calm yourself down? How do you make sure that you get through a day and get your work done? Because if autism sometimes will bring with it just the difficulty persevering when those around you are acting like clowns. It's uncomfortable. It feels you might feel uneasy. So how do you get through the day for yourself? What kind of things do you do to ensure that you get done what you need to get done and don't allow that stuff to just take you off course, off track? Because I know, I say, just add this, and then I'll be quiet, is that the people, neurotypicals, are dealing with their own stuff. And you know what? A big chunk of the time we don't do it well. And it's not called autism, but we have other things that are just,
That's called life.
It is called life, but it's not. It's just it's not always the clarity. I think we're all seeking clarity, and but so those people that are difficult to work with so they don't go away. They're there. How do you deal with their nonsense? How do you deal with their behaviors? Not just that guy that was clearly upset because he had probably a preconceived idea of how you should react to him. You didn't, and therefore you became a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what about the others? What about the gossipy people, the sarcasm that's used, the demanding boss?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, know your own worth. I think that's the biggest problem that I've had, and that I've noticed what other people have that are on the spectrum. When they sit down to a job interview, when they sit down to their job every day, they don't know their own worth. And they actually put other people and neurotypicals above them, saying that, they can do it better, or, so that it's that have the confidence to know who you are, what your worth is. Know that you are a good person, that you are smart, and even if you don't think that you are, you have a certain set of skills and values that you can bring to the table. You have a different way of looking at things. And people can take that and, make it worthwhile. And yeah, that's what I'm saying is, like, I was a part of accounts receivables, but they added on more and more responsibilities because I could handle it, because I could take care of it.
Because you did the job, you did it well, and you were reliable.
Exactly.
I have a question for you, Richard.
Sure.
In regards to just dealing with people at work, is it a thing that you do where work is at work and social life is at home, or something like that, or is it like, how is it that you separate the two?
Yes. So at home, I kind of make sure I have a place where I can de-stress. So for me, especially since I have like a reading disability, sitting down with a book would not be my thing. But for you, it might be to have a room with a beanbag chair and, and a library full of books. or something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. It's something where you can de-stress. And another thing that I kind of do is I kind of focus on the task at hand.
Okay.
So while they're sitting there doing their little drama queen stuff, it's like you can sit there and focus and get the job done. And here's another thing. Realize that it's how do I describe this? It's whatever they're going through. The reason why they're acting like they are, and this has everything to do with those kids, middle school bullies, all the way up to that 60-year-old at work who decides to try to cut you down, and make you part of a gossip. Part of the work gossip. These people are not happy within themselves. And you just got it. When you have that in mind, you almost feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Can't never tell them that, but...
What's that?
You can't ever tell them that, but...
No. That would make them mad.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for you. You know how many times I wanted to say that? You have such a little pathetic life.
But that's really helped you, that you've gotten to a point where you see that what they're doing is about them, not about you.
Exactly. And you focus on you and what makes you happy and what makes you productive and what makes, because you're there for a reason. Even if it is, $10 an hour flipping burgers, you're there for a reason. You were hired to do a certain job, whether it's flipping burgers or washing dishes or whatever. For yourself, do it the best that you can.
Yeah.
And don't worry about anyone else, because everyone else will try to stir up problems or try to bring you in their little cliques, and that might even get you in trouble. Because more than likely they're trying to do something that the managers don't want them to do.
Are you at this point in life, are you social, so that, let's say when you meet, you would see people, co-workers in the lunchroom, do you have any desire to have conversations with them, or is that, that's your downtime, and so you kind of stay to yourself?
Yeah, sometimes I kind of force myself. I try to do small talk every so often, just to have those relationships in a sense, and yeah, it seems like people really open up to me because I am real and genuine. I've helped a lot of people at work, but at the same time, when I take a lunch, I sometimes take it at my desk because I don't want to run into other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can understand that. One of the issues that I've run into, whether it be college or whatever, is that I always try to do too much. Whether it be socially or whatever, I try and take on way too much. And it's something I willingly do, but then it just catches up to me.
And you don't know when to put the limits on that. Right.
Yeah, sometimes I take on a lot to keep me busy. I like to be busy. I like to keep going. Yeah. And see how much I can get done in the day. But yeah, you gotta know your limits too, because everyone has them, and you do not want to take on too much, because that just makes you shut down.
So one of the things with Josh that he makes him crazy anytime is that when but really at work in that type of setting, and it's not just it doesn't just bother him, it trips him up, and he's had issues and that kind of build, is that when other people don't follow the rules,
especially if they're the ones who are supposed to enforce the rules.
So how do you handle that type of situation? For Explain what that feels like for you, Josh.
It's all-encompassing.
Okay.
It is absolutely drowning, it feels like. Mm-hmm. Not where I can't breathe, but just I'm so overwhelmed with everything, and it feels like I'm drowning.
Mm-hmm. Have you felt like that before, Richard?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to take a deep breath and sometimes go with it. Because, yeah, they made certain rules, but if they will try to get away with something, I guess it really depends on the rule and if it's okay to be stretched a little bit and if it's okay for you. So, for example, in retail, there is this rule, same company, by the way, that I was talking about, where the management position that I was in, they can only work you one night a week, one closing a week.
Mm-hmm.
And they would always understaff me, and they would always do 3 to 4 nights a week with one morning. So they would call that a clopen, where I would close and then open the next day and barely get any sleep.
Oh.
Wow. Sorry.
So yeah, retail is harsh sometimes.
Yes, yeah. I've heard that.
Especially management and retail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
But in that sense, it's like it's against the rules, but the upper management did it anyway. And the question is do you gripe? Because sometimes HR doesn't care. Sometimes the district managers don't care.
Well, the thing is, though, that with that type of situation, and it's exactly as you're describing it. So Josh hasn't worked in retail, but that's the exact scenario where there's just this unfairness. And Josh begins to shut down. Yeah. He begins to feel like what he just described, and so he described how it feels. What that looks like is beginning to lose focus, beginning to lose that sense of well-being. Mm-hmm. It affects every aspect of him, and I can tell you that physiologically, his eyes begin to look cloudy.
Like the 1,000-yard stare or something, or
well, it's just there's this like when you start to shut down, mm-hmm. there's like a I don't know, your eyes, a glaze kind of, I guess. Your eyes just look different. And that's how I know, Josh, that look, when we're out doing something, or when we have all the family around, and when it's, holidays and everybody's together, when there's times that you come up to me, and I just look at you and you go, yeah, go. Yeah, you don't even have to ask. Yeah. Yes, go to your room. Yeah. You can, because of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm saying it's a glossiness. No, it's not glossiness. It's a
glassy-eyed.
No, it's I know the glassy eye, and I've caused myself to get glassy-eyed in the past, but yeah. No, not that. But it's kind of like this fogginess that it just has a different. So let's say you have a clear window, and then you put that film over it so people can't see in. Mm-hmm. It's not as dense as that, so it's not as thick and.
So it's like it's clouded.
Yes, it's just it looks like it's just kind of clouded a little bit.
Okay.
Your eyes still look blue, white part's still white, but they're not clear.
Right.
Yeah. So. What I'm saying is that what Richard's describing and happens, and what you've described emotionally, I'm saying that I see physically in your eyes when that kind of thing happens. Okay. So Richard, sometimes, Josh actually, it's hard for him to stay working in jobs where things are not fair, when things are not equal, and when somebody gets away with horrible behavior and is sometimes even rewarded.
Yeah.
So do you feel those things physically that Josh has described?
Yes, I do. part of it is like the shutting down because you don't know what to do next. It's a fight or flight, and you kind of get this deer in headlights kind of stare, like, okay, now what? The body just, and the mind just does not know what to do next. And that's why I was saying focus on your tasks and not worry about the drama, not worry about them. We have this sense of what is right and what is wrong.
Yes.
And I do too, because again, this happened, at the very beginning, what we talked about, and it was like, I did get mad because it was wrong. Yes. Period. Right. End of story. Right. There was no gray area. There was no nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem, is like when there's a rule, it doesn't, people break them all the time. But for us, it's like, okay, this was like, this was gold here. This is a rule that we should be following this. Yeah. Why are you breaking it?
Yeah.
Right.
And just realize that sometimes, you follow the rules, and if they don't, that's on them. And
I think the biggest issue that I have is whenever it directly affects me.
Yes. And like with that scheduling issue that I had, it did affect me because I worked so many nights understaffed, and I still came out ahead.
Yeah.
I still did an amazing job.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just got to push through that and realize, how does it affect you in that case? How does it affect your job? And I'm asking that for an example from you. How does that affect you?
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah. So, but like my example, for example, is like it affected my scheduling. I just had to work harder, and that's how it affected me. But I chose to be in that job and do it right, and I still will get paid the same, whether they treat me right or not.
Right.
So for you, what's an example of them not following the rules and it affecting you?
So, I was working security at a
FedEx.
I was not going to say a name, but yeah.
Oh, oops.
Dave?
So I was working as security over wintertime up in Pennsylvania, and it was just before Christmas, and I was outside in the blizzard and everything like that, checking the trucks that were coming in, and there was a line of them, and the new manager comes out and calls out to me, and says something to me. I don't even know what. Hey Josh, can I talk to you about your scheduling or something like that? It's like, yeah, hold on a second, let me finish these trucks. I come back in and find out that she had scheduled me over New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. And like, why am I scheduled for this? Oh, you said that you could. You said yes. I'm like, no, I never said that. She's like, yes, you did. Just like that. She said, yes, you did. And that just started a landslide of all kinds of issues I had with this.
Well, because you didn't. Because also the packages that come through, the way that they would,
No, not. This is what I'm saying is that just from this point, this part of the job.
Okay.
Having to come in on what is a traditional holiday for us, where we all get together and do stuff. Mm-hmm. To be told that I said something that I did not say whatsoever, is not okay. It's putting words in my mouth that I didn't say, and so so lying and saying that I said something that I didn't.
Right.
That's a huge issue with me.
Right. So it would be one thing, basically, what you're talking about is like, it would be one thing if they said, hey, sorry, but this is your job, and you're scheduled, and you got to work these hours.
Yeah.
But to say that you said something that you didn't, then that creates kind of like a snowball for you.
Yes.
That's the thing. And Richard, I'm love to hear how you deal with this part, is that for Josh, when there's something that comes up that's uncomfortable, that's unfair and unjust, he can't seem to let it go and move on, because it's that unfairness that is
injustice.
It's an injustice, whether it's towards him or another coworker. Something that's, when people are just not getting treated fairly, is a perception that people are not getting treated fairly. It begins to wear on him to a point where
I can't function.
He can't function. So that might be the beginning.
There's a loss of control.
Yes.
And in this case, what happens is that, okay, let me ask you this, Josh. So why do you think that she did that?
What was that?
Well, why do you think that she scheduled you when she either lied about it or had some kind of miscommunication, but she scheduled you on the days where you couldn't work? Why do you think that she did that?
Because she could. Reason? Because she could. She later on, she like several weeks later, she would say to me, "Listen to me, I'm the boss. You have to do what I tell you to do." After her telling me that I'm essentially a liar.
Okay, and that's a bullying technique, right?
Yes.
There. So she feels like, and there's a lot of bosses out there that are like that. I mean, and again, I have stories. I'll tell you later on. But it is a bullying technique of trying to get their way without really working with others.
Yeah.
And there's many different reasons why a manager will do that. One of them could be they're trying to push you out. And that goes back to know your own worth. You know?
Yeah.
Or it could be that they genuinely don't know.
Well,
and for 3, realize that they put on their pants the same way that you do in the morning. And although that they have a certain amount of authority in that job, realize that you have a certain amount of rights. So one of the things that you could say in that situation is, okay, where do you have that I said that? Because maybe they have it in the hiring, like maybe you did fill out on the application that you are able to work New Year's. And maybe that's your mistake, and you might have to own up to that. However, if she has no documentation, she doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Right. Well,
and so that's where you're protected on that case. And yeah, she might use her power to try to weasel you out of that position and find someone who's, more spineless, and they do. But
yeah,
that's a good way to kind of protect yourself, is kind of standing up for yourself in the way of staying calm, know your rights, and do take one for the team every so often. But again, you have your own rights and you have your own schedules.
Yeah. And I mean, if she had brought it up differently, if she had said, okay, is it okay if you will work this then? If she had even just done that little bit.
But it's your perception. So what happens is, when you feel like somebody is not being honest, when you feel like they're not following the rules, that's the thing that really trips you up.
Yes.
Yes, correct. So whether it's in this example or many others, even working with somebody, doing the same job side by side, but they're not doing it the way that you were told to do it. Richard, when Josh was in first grade, they were doing his hearing test, and this is they called me and told me this. Well, Josh had to be first in line for everything when he was in first grade. It was like, yeah, that's how it had to be.
And the lines had to be perfectly
straight. Yeah, the
straight.
lines had to be perfectly straight.
Yeah.
And so he was there, and he took this hearing test, and they said to raise your hand on, whichever arm on the side that you hear the tone, whichever ear you hear it, raise that hand. So Josh took it literally, like he does, and raised his arms high in the sky, like straight up, fingertips towards the ceiling as far as he could reach, and did his whole test that way. Mm-hmm. Then he had to sit and wait for the other kids to do theirs, and it made him crazy.
Yes.
They called me and told me that he was the first and he did it this way, and he was insisting that everybody else did it that way. They didn't raise their hand high enough. They didn't hold it the right way. They didn't do it the right way.
They were doing it lackadaisically almost.
Right. And so what happens with Josh is that there's this internal need for things to conform, and for things to make sense, and for things to fall in place. And when they don't, it begins to snowball, and he has a difficult time. And so we're hoping that with the therapies that he's getting now, that's something that he's going to, and I don't mean, medication and stuff. I mean life skill stuff, and to be able to get some support from the people that he's seeing now on how he can look at a situation and change it to be something that he can deal with, like you do, like you're doing right now, Richard. How you take a situation that's uncomfortable, but you realize that you're better off keeping that job than telling the people what idiots they are.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that's what he's learned. That's what he's...
I know, it sounded like you insinuated that that's what I do.
No, you don't. No.
Come on, Josh. We all know that, you call everyone idiots all the time.
Well, of course, with superior intellect and everything. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, man.
I know you want to sometimes, but sometimes it's like...
Yeah. So do you need a lot of downtime after a work day?
Yeah, I do. And sometimes I have to just make sure I push through things. Like, I even procrastinate on some things. Like I may have to go to the store and buy some food. And some things I can't do it because it's like, oh, well, I need food in order to eat tonight. So I have to go to the store.
Yeah.
But... There are some times where it's like, okay, well, I could prolong getting gas until tomorrow, instead of today. So today was a really bad day. I just need more downtime. So it's just about regulating yourself and your needs, and not work because it's like we have different needs than other people. Other people, it's like for some reason it's going out to clubs and drinking and socializing and stuff like that, and that's my worst nightmare.
Yes.
I have to work myself up to something like that. Then I'm kind of down for a couple nights after that. For me, it's like sitting back and playing a video game, or chilling out to some relaxing music or something like that. It's
right. For Josh, it would be reading a book.
Because even one of my things I love to do, D&D. I still have to have downtime after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I get it.
I guess what it comes back to is that for the two of you, you're both on the spectrum, and it's like you can only take human interaction for so long. It can be draining.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I know that with you, Josh, and you're saying the same thing, Richard, is that, yeah, after a day of having to interact with people, you need to have them go away.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't want to go out for drinks afterwards, and you know what? That's okay. You don't have to do that. That's not part of the job description.
Yeah.
That's more of a bonding thing for them, and we don't need that necessarily.
Right.
And again, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, the things that you've shared are just wonderful. We just so appreciate you doing the podcast with us. Josh is starting to get antsy. I can tell he's wandering off, and
yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Josh,
That's
come
okay.
back here.
Yeah. Right. So like he's how does it say? It's on Popeye, I think. He's done all that he can and stands all that he can and all that he... Wait, what? Popeye, what does he say? All that I am is all that I am. All that I am is all that I
am what I am.
I am what I am. I don't remember. Apparently what I just tried to say was irrelevant. I don't know. I had it in my head, but then it flew out. I don't know. I am
what I am, and that's all that I am. I am what I am, that's what I am.
Yep. Here you
Say
go.
it
Dun-dun-dun.
Sing it again, Josh.
Yeah. Oh, man. We would love to have you back on the podcast again, Richard.
And thanks for coming back this time.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be glad to come back again whenever you guys need me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. And anybody that's listening, if you have questions about for Richard, for what we talked about today, or Josh, that would be fantastic. Send the questions in, and it's always
Nice
important. Yeah. And any feedback is appreciated. Yeah. But Richard, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you so much. And everybody else out there, thank you so much for listening. Count on us every single Thursday from now on, going up on Eastern Time at 10 o'clock. And that's the way it's going to be.
AM or PM?
AM.
10 o'clock AM?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's programmed to do that. It goes on YouTube. The glitches that we had was that for some reason it would be put up on time, but then it wouldn't show up on time. YouTube, it's happened a couple times where it goes up, but then it pops up on your dad's computer that it's been posted, but it's 2 days later than he posted it. And I don't know if it's just because more people are at home now, more people are, on their computers and on the sites. I don't know, but that is what we will put it out every Thursday, 10 a.m. from now on, every week. Okay. And anybody has any subject that they want us to talk about, please let us know. If you're somebody that wants to be on the podcast, please let us know. And anyway, do that thing if you would that with 5 stars. I've mentioned this before. If you give us 5 stars, it helps us. I don't know how, but it does. So that would be great. So anyway, we've been on here a long time today. Thanks for sticking with us, Josh. Thank you for sticking with us. Richard, thanks for sticking with us. Everybody out there, love you.
Bye.